So these kind of things, we can't imitate. If you try to do that, then you might manage it for a day or two. But then what happens is, because we don't have that purification of heart, then desires come up. So although he was personification of renunciation, he was one who also instructed Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to preach all over the world. So although he was considered to be such a perfection of Bhajananandi, then he wasn't avoiding preaching. He wasn't like he was just selfishly enjoying himself with his own spiritual advancement. His mood was that this movement of Lord Chaitanya should be spread all over the world. And of course that was passed on to Srila Prabhupada, who came and realized that. So here, in 1849, Srila Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj left Grihastha life after the death of his wife. He moved to Vrindavan and took initiation from Sri Bhagavat Das Babaji, a disciple of Jagannath Das Babaji. For over 30 years, Gaura Das Babaji stayed in Vrindavan, performing bhajan under the trees at Giri Govardhan, Nandagram, Varshana, Radhakund, Suryakund, Raval, and Gokula. Sitting in seclusion, he chanted 200,000 names of Krishna every day, 128 rounds. As he wandered through the 12 forests of Raja, he would loudly chant the holy names in a deep voice full of lamentation. His mood of renunciation was unparalleled. Okay, so just kind of read some of these things. So he used to practice Madhukari. So does anybody not know what Madhukari is? Hands up. Okay, does anybody know what Madhu is? Madhu is honey. Madhukari is the profession of a bee. Yeah, so it's related to a bee. I mean, just like the bee goes from one flower to another and takes a little bit of nectar from each flower, then it doesn't take too much from one flower. So Madhukari, the profession of Madhukari is begging door to door, and whatever foodstuff you get from door to door, that's what you eat. So sometimes renunciants used to give themselves, they say, okay, if I don't collect in like 20 doors enough, or whatever I collect in these 20 doors is what I'll eat. So he was one of these devotees who would collect like maybe 3 doors, and after the first one he'd say, oh, can't be bothered with this, let's just fast today and chant. So imagine that was your Sankirtan leader. You're doing door to door. Okay, if we get some of the next 3 doors, then we eat today. If not, we're just going to chant. So you might think, oh, that's good, we'll get a day off Sankirtan today. But that's okay for the first day. So while staying in Vrindavan, he made a flower garland every day for Radha and Krishna. After 30 years of rendering intimate service in Vrindavan, Babaji Maharaj felt inspired by the divine grace to see Sri Navadvip Dham. He visited all the Leela stands of Lord Gauranga in Gauramandala. He used to sing one bhajan, which means by receiving Nitai's mercy, one gets Gauranga's mercy, which makes him eligible for Krishna Prema. With Krishna Prema, one can attain the service of Srimati Radharani and the Gopis. Anybody know what that bhajan is? Gaurapahu Navadiyam, I know that one. Don't remember what it's called. He regularly associated with and heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Swananda Sugata Kunj in Godrumadweep. Constantly absorbing bhajan, Srila Babaji Maharaj had no desire to make disciples. On the request of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, however, he reconsidered. Upon seeing the true humility and deep attachment of Thakur Bhaktivinoda's son, Bimal Prasad, Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj initiated him as Varshabhanavi Daita Das, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So there's a few different accounts on that. Some people say that he approached Gaura Kishore Babaji Maharaj twice. Some people say it's 4 times, and others say it was 12 times on the 13th approach he got initiation. But the basic story is that he was told by his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to go and receive initiation from Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. And then he was told, I'm not accepting any disciples. He says, I don't want to be he didn't want to be involved in having disciples. So he went back and told his father, and his father told him, don't come back here until you're initiated. So finally what happened was there was a log which used to cross over a river, and Babaji Maharaj used to cross over that every day at one point in his day. And so he came one day and found Bhagavatam sitting on the log. And he said, if you don't initiate me now, I'm going to throw myself in the river to drown. And then so he took dust from his lotus feet and he threw it on his face. He said, okay, you're initiated. He took that one disciple. To keep mundane people from approaching him for material boons, he once resided in the lavatories at the Kulia Dharmshala in Koladweep for 6 months. When public officials came offering to build him a proper bhajan kutir, Babaji Maharaj locked himself inside and said that he already had one. He believed that associating with materialistic people was much worse than the smell of the stool in the latrine. A little note on that is that he wasn't actually chanting in a stinky toilet, but somebody offered to buy him, to build him a place, and he says, just let me chant in your latrine, that would be better. So they actually cleaned it up and made it nice for him. But there's another little story, if you don't mind me sharing some of these stories. Because he didn't want to be wasting his time with materialistic people who were always looking for benedictions. So some grihastas came to him and typically, Maharaj, please give us your mercy. And he says, my mercy is you pass through right here, and then no one will come and visit me. He says, this is what I want. Yeah, can we do some service for you? Yes, you can pass through here in front of my kutir and no one will come. Because he didn't want to be interrupted in his bhajan. So the essence of Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj's instructions, the divine name of Krishna, offers the one and only shelter. That's basically what his main instruction was. One should never try to remember Radha Damodar's transcendental pastimes by artificial methods. Constant chanting of the divine names will purify the heart. By chanting Harinam, the syllables of the Mahamantra will gradually reveal the spiritual form, qualities and pastimes of Sri Krishna. Then you will realize your own eternal spiritual form, service, etc. On the 19th of November 1915, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj joined the eternal blissful pastimes of Gandharvika Giridhari. His beloved disciple, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, established his samadhi near Lord Chaitanya's Yogapith in Sridham Mayapur. That's now been moved to Radhakund because when another little story there is after he passed away, and many of the mahants or temple owners gathered around and tried to lay claim on the body of Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj because they knew it would be a lucrative business. If you have the ashes or the body of a great saintly person like that, then everyone will come to pay homage, and then there'll be much donations, and then there'll be nice prasad every day. So they were thinking like this, how they could make a living out of it. But none of them were his disciples, so they were arguing over it. And Bhaktivedanta Saraswati came on the scene, and it got quite heated to the point there was actually local authorities. It was either a judge or a police became present, and Bhaktivedanta Saraswati offered the solution. He says that if any one of these mahants has not had any illicit connection with the opposite sex, then they can take the body. So he said within 6 months, and nobody stepped forward, and then he says within 3 months, within a week, within 3 days. So actually this is how he took the body of his spiritual master. Actually, another part on that is that Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, in his humility and renunciation, said that when I leave this body, just drag it through the streets. And so they were going to do that, and he was Bhaktivedanta Saraswati's furious. He said, no one will touch the divine body of my spiritual master. So this was part of the argument. So at that point, then he established, but then in due course of time, something happened that some unscrupulous person came in charge of that samadhi, and the Ganges flooded it, and then some of these items were taken to Radhakund, where you can visit that. Samadhi Mandir. In Vraja Leela, he serves Srimati Radharani as Guna Manjari. Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki. Reading from Prabhupada Amrita. Volume 6, Uniting Two Worlds, Preaching to America, Part 1. For driving Srila Prabhupada to the park, a friend of the Denver Temple had lent his Lincoln Continental, formerly Richard Nixon's presidential limousine. Brahmananda Swami pointed out the car's luxurious features to Prabhupada, including bulletproof glass windows. So bullet is expected also, Prabhupada laughed. Brahmananda remarked that the world leaders were always in anxiety. Prabhupada agreed. In the material world, there was danger at every step. He began talking of Indian politics, Indira Gandhi and Jai Prakash Narayan in bitter disagreement. Both of them are in distressed position, Prabhupada said. I am thinking of writing them on the basis of our Bhagavad Gita. Do you think it is advised? When Prabhupada mentioned that Indira Gandhi occasionally went to see her guru, Anandamayi, Brahmananda remarked that her guru had commented favourably about the chanting of Hare Krishna. So what do you think? Prabhupada asked the sannyasis, Tamal Krishna Bhavananda and Satsvarup. Shall I write? I have made a draft of a letter this night, so you come and see. Let us take a chance. We want good for everyone, and this is the only medicine, Hare Krishna. For all wrongs, Paradukha Dukhi, people are suffering. Interesting there that Prabhupada didn't have to ask his devotees for advice or their opinion, but he's teaching them. He's teaching this should be the considerations. If they were to think, oh yes, now we can advise Prabhupada, then that is actually a mistake. The devotees agreed that letters would be a good idea, although they doubted whether the politicians would take the advice or even read such letters. Prabhupada then asked about the public's response to Krishna consciousness in Denver. They get nice attendance on Sundays, Satsvarup answered. Many people come. There is good hope, Prabhupada affirmed. Good book distribution here too. Prabhupada nodded. That is the most successful. Wherever book distribution is going on nicely, that is successful. Because people are in gross ignorance, they are taking this temporary life as everything. Very horrible condition. We're trying to explain what is the actual life. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, entitled Lord Rishabhadev's Teachings, Text 8. Pumsha Striya Mituni Bhavam Etam. Pumsha Striya Mituni Bhavam Etam. Tayor Mito Hridaya Grantim Ahu. Tayor Mito Hridaya Grantim Ahu. Hato Grihakshetra Sutapta Vitayar. Hato Grihakshetra Sutapta Vitayar. Janasya Moho Ayam Aham Ameti. Janasya Moho Yam Aham Ameti. Pumshastriya Mituni Bhavametam. Tayor Mito Hridaya Grantimahu. Ato Grihakshetra Sutapta Vitayar. Janasya Moho Yamaham Ameti. Pumshastriya Mituni Bhavametam. Tayor Mito Hridaya Grantimahu. Ato Grihakshetra Sutapta Vitayar. Janasya Moho Yamaham Ameti. Shastriya Mithuni Bhavametam Tayor Mito Hridaya Granti Mahu Ato Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vitayar Janashamo Yam Mahamameti Pumstriya Shastriya Mithuni Bhavametam Tayor Mito Hridaya Granti Mahu Ato Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vitayar Janashamo Yamahamameti.
Shastriya Mithuni Bhavanetam
Sastriya Mithuni Bhavanetam
Tayo Mito Hridaya Granti Mahu
Tayo Mito Hridaya Granti Mahu
Ato Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vitaya
Ato Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vitaya
Janashya Moho Yamahamameti
Janasya Moho Yamahamameti.
Ladies.
Sastriya Mithuni Bhavanetam
Sastriya Mithuni Bhavanetam
Tayo Mito Hridaya Granti
Tayo Mito Hridaya Granti
Mahu
Mahu
Ato Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vitaya
Ato Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vitaya
Janasya Moho Yamahamameti
Janasya Moho Yamahamameti. Sastriya Mithuni Bhavanetam Tayo Mito Hridaya Granti Mahu Ato Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vitaya Janasya Moho Yamahamameti.
Pumsha of a male, Striya of a female, Mithuni Bhavam, attraction for sexual life. Etam, this, Tayo, of both of them, Mita, between one another, Hridaya Grantim, the knot of the hearts, Ahu, they call, Ata, thereafter, Griha, by home, Kshetra, field, Suta, children, Apta, relatives, Vitai, and by wealth, Janasya, of the living being, Moha, illusion, Ayam, this, Aham, I, Mama, mine, Iti, thus. Translation. The attraction between male and female is a basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Please repeat. This attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. So Prabhupada's purport. Sex serves as the natural attraction between man and woman, and when they are married, the relationship becomes more involved. Due to the entangling relationship between man and woman, there is a sense of illusion whereby one thinks, this man is my husband, or this woman is my wife. This is called Hridaya Granthi, the hard knot in the heart. This knot is very difficult to undo, even though a man and woman separate either for the principles of Varnashram or simply to get a divorce. In any case, the man always thinks of the woman, and the woman always thinks of the man. Thus, a person becomes materially attached to family, property, and children. Although all of these are temporary, the possessor unfortunately identifies with his property and wealth. Sometimes, even after renunciation, one becomes attached to a temple or to the few things that constitute the property of a sannyasi, but such attachment is not as strong as family attachment. The attachment to the family is the strongest illusion. In the Satya Samhita it is stated, Pramadya Yagya Valkadya Muchante Stri Sahayina Bodhyante Kechanai Tesham Vishesham Cha Vido Vidu. Sometimes it is found among exalted personalities like Lord Brahma that the wife and children are not a cause of bondage. On the contrary, the wife actually helps further spiritual life and liberation. Nonetheless, most people are bound by the knots of the marital relationship and consequently they forget their relationship with Krishna. Om Agyanat Marandashya Gyananjana Slakaya Chakramritamina Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Prativachalam Pangamlaga Tegrim Yakripatamam Vande Shiram Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation again. The attraction between male and female is a basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. So, what's the basis of material existence? Yeah. So, there's a nice prayer. Maybe someone remembers who said it. And the body says that just as the mind of young men is attracted to the mind of attracted to young women, and the mind of young women is attracted to young men. And nowadays, it can be any kind of variety of that attraction. So, so let my mind be attracted to you. So, and that's directed towards Krishna. So, this is the prayer of a devotee. Does anyone remember who spoke that prayer?
Swami.
Was it Rupa Goswami? I thought you would know. So spontaneous attraction, this is the purpose of our continuous endeavour in sadhana bhakti, that we come to the point of spontaneous attraction. And Rupa Goswami is saying that just as our mind is automatically attracted, if we see a beautiful person, we feel attracted to that person, then that's the kind of attraction we want for Krishna, that as soon as we hear about Krishna, as soon as we see a picture of Krishna, we think about Krishna, our mind is so attracted. And just like, and especially teenagers, when they're going through a period of time when their hormones are kicking in and they're getting bewildered and they can just think of nothing but boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, then this is the type of mood that an advanced devotee is, that they can't stop thinking about Krishna. It's just unnatural. It doesn't happen. So Satyananda Maharaj was saying this, that we have to make endeavour, continued endeavour. So endeavour, and then ultimately, after making so much endeavour, then it will come naturally. The natural attraction will be there. So it's not going to come cheaply or easily. It's not going to come today or tomorrow. But it's like they say, when you begin a journey, it begins with one step. So with each step you take, it's taking you closer and closer to the goal. And the goal is Krishna Prema. This is the best benediction that anyone could achieve with this human form of life. Human form of life is already a great blessing. The best use of the human form of life is to live a life in such a way that we're cultivating everything which is favourable for devotional service and avoiding everything which is unfavourable. So this is the basis of Desha Kalapatra, time, place and circumstance. We can ask ourselves, is this situation favourable or unfavourable for my Krishna consciousness? Is it favourable or unfavourable for this person's Krishna consciousness? And then, of course, that gets broken up into many other little instructions like preaching the holy name, the glories of the holy name to a faithless or atheistic person, things like that. So when this attraction to the material world, and it's basically comes to I, me, and mine. So Prabhupada says that even if one is separated by renunciation or by divorce, then still the attachment is there. He was saying that even a sannyasi can be attached to the very few items which they possess, and that attachment can be concentrated onto like their danda and their water pot. But he said it's not as bad, so it's not like, well, I'm an attached Kriya householder, he's just an attached sannyasi, he's really attached to that danda. Yeah, that's really going to cause him a lot of problems, isn't it? I don't think. So Prabhupada said it's not as bad, as the Hridaya Granthi, the knot within the heart. So this is what happens in family life. Typical materialistic family life, that is that boy meets girl, girl meets boy, whatever, boy meets boy, girl meets girl, whatever happens these days. They fall in love, and then they got to get a place to stay. So then, first of all, they meet each other, that's the first knot, and then they get a place to stay, next knot, and then they have to get a job to maintain that place to stay, another knot on top of that knot. So it's like you ever try to undo something which, especially if someone else tied the knot, it's not so bad if you tied the knot yourself, you get an idea of how you tied it. But if you come across, even if you tied it yourself, many knots on top of each other, you just don't know where to start, do you? It's like, let's just cut it, start again, I'll throw it away. You think, I can't waste it. So this is what goes on, is we create a knot, and then we tie another knot on top of that knot, then another one, and Prabhupada says another one, and another knot, and another knot. And then children come, and just like that drama, we do Krishna's benediction. Then, what's the name of the chap who's offered the benediction? We can call him Suresh. So Narada, when he visits Lord Narayan, and he said, I'll give you this benediction, that whoever you see, you can invite him back and take him back straight away, take him back to Godhead. He doesn't have to complete their term in this life or do anything, just bring him straight back. And so Narada, when he's all excited, thinks, great, we'll be able to take loads of people back. So he goes to Suresh, this first person he sees, and he says, I just met Lord Narayan, and he said, that I can take anyone back with me, so I'd like to take you back right now. He says, I'll just have to ask my wife, come back in the morning. So he comes back in the morning and says, well, we just got a young baby, so I need to kind of earn a bit of money, come back in a year's time. And then he says, well, he's just gone through school, come back in another few years' time, and he's just about to sit his exams. We just want to see him through university. To come back in a few years' time, and then definitely we'll be right up there with Lord Narayan. And then he comes back and he says, well, he's just getting married, so we just want to see this through. We have to sort the wedding out, etc. So eventually he goes like this the whole way through, and he lives his life, and he accumulates a lot of wealth and family members, etc. And then Narada, when he goes to visit Lord Narayan, he says, you were right, I wasn't successful in getting this, it's proving to be very difficult to get Suresh to come back to Godhead immediately. He says, well, you can go and visit him now because he's no longer Suresh. He's taken birth as a dog in the same household. So he goes to see him, and the dog's named Lucky. So he calls on Lucky. He said, Lucky, how would you like to get really lucky and come back to see Lord Narayan just now? He says, you got to be joking. I spent my whole last life maintaining all this wealth. Now I'm going to stay here and guard it. So never ready to go back. That was the situation, that we'll always find some reason to stay in the material world. And sometimes that happens. Prabhupada says that sometimes someone's very attached to a particular residence. They may take birth as a tree near it, or even sometimes inside it. Sometimes you see some dilapidated house and you see some trees growing inside it, and you wonder, oh, was that the people who lived there before who were so attached, didn't want to leave it? And so this is the nature of material attachment, that it's never done with us. There's always something else. Like Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, endlessly mutable. You'll always create some other idea. Just like if you ever get caught up on Facebook or YouTube or something like that, and you're just, after being there for some time, you realise you're just looking at useless things. You're trying to find something which is useless anyway, and you realise you just spent a load of time, wasted a load of time, not even on something valuable, just some prajalpa nonsense, something you're not even interested in, stuff like that. Or you find yourself getting into an argument with somebody which you could have avoided if you just didn't bother going on Facebook in the first place. And family life is full of difficulties. There's anxieties there, because we're attracted to the idea of it, and in our mind, each individual's got their idea of what that perfect situation is going to be. And it's often different from each other. And often because people's attraction to each other nowadays is so superficial, it's not based on dharma, religious principles, spiritual principles, or mutual respect. It's based on mutual superficial attraction. So when one becomes less attractive, or one finds someone more attractive, then sometimes it ends in divorce because of that. So this kind of basis of attraction doesn't satisfy. And even if we get everything what we want and we apparently seem to be satisfied, then we have to leave it behind sometime. And then it is distressful because we become so attached to it, then getting taken away from our attachment. Just like just now, if we want to do something, someone says, no, you can't do that, then we get upset. So what to speak of everything we're attached to suddenly gets taken away? How upsetting would that be? So the life of a devotee is that we voluntarily start to give up our attachments while we're still fit, while we're still consciously, and while we've got time to do that, we start to voluntarily give up our attachments. And giving up our attachments, sometimes that means giving up doing certain things. And sometimes it means actually just seeing it in a different light, seeing that this is actually to be engaged in Krishna's service. So therefore, at the end of the purport here, Srila Prabhupada says, sometimes it's found among exalted personalities like Lord Brahma that the wife and children are not the cause of bondage. On the contrary, the wife actually helps further spiritual life and liberation. So that's from the point of view of the male, and from the point of view of the female, then also the husband can help with the liberation. So this is the grihasta. So there's two words, grihasta and grihamedi. So grihamedi means simply the house is a place of sense enjoyment. That's what it's meant for. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending, polished animal life. Prabhupada says that you sleep in a golden bed with silk sheets and the dog sleeps in the street. But when you're sleeping, you don't know where you are. You're not lying there thinking, oh, this gold bed that I'm sleeping on is really comfortable. You can only do that if you're awake. When you're sleeping, you're dreaming and you're somewhere else. You could be dreaming you're a dog on the street. So this kind of polished animalism is no more advanced than the actual animal propensities. So basically, sometimes it's referred to in Prabhupada's books. And there's one book called Intellectual Animalism, where it's explained in great detail how the activities of the attached living entity is no better than an animal unless we can start to minimize eating, sleeping, mating, and depending. So when it's the husband and the wife, they help each other in Krishna consciousness, and they encourage each other, they assist each other to remember Krishna, and their household is actually becomes a temple, and their purpose for living, their purpose for raising children, etc., is actually to make them devotees. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he also said that he only remained with his family because he seen them as devotees. So he had the transcendental vision to see them like that, and he would serve them as such. So we have to see that everyone is devotee, and therefore they're not there simply for enjoyment, not there for us to exploit. That's what happens, isn't it? We exploit another person's body, exploit another person's wealth or facilities or situation to improve our own lot. So ultimately it's based on I, me and mine, and because the more we base our life on I, me and mine, the more selfish it is, then the more dissatisfied it is, and therefore the more divorces and unhappy family situations. But if we make Krishna the centre instead of making ourselves the centre, or our sense gratification the centre, if we make Krishna the centre, then a devotee family, they can be steady in their devotion regardless of what the material situation is. Sometimes people, if they fall into material hardship, then they split up. They can't stand living in poverty together. But a devotee, because their basis is Krishna consciousness, then whether they're in poverty or whether they're materially affluent, then it doesn't affect that relationship. Some of the devotees, when they go around the businesses, they're discovering that some of those people are no longer there, and because they'd taken their own life, because business wasn't doing so good and they couldn't afford to give the children a good Christmas, so they took their life. And this has happened. It happens every year. It's very, very stressful. There's a big demand on families to come up with the goods, and pressure's on. And this is it's criminal that the commercial world puts so much pressure on people that the children become such a thorn on the side that they're nagging the parents for this and for that, or the husband or the wife, or in the name of giving, then they're just becoming like leeches on each other. So of course that doesn't mean to say that those who actually do give out of the purpose for giving, that is a good thing, because that is recommended in the Nectar of Instruction, giving and receiving gifts. It's a Vaishnava thing. It doesn't take that someone has to dictate to us to do it on a certain day. We can do it any day. And sometimes giving and receiving gifts doesn't have to come in the form of a box with a bow on it with some nice wrapping paper. It could come in the form of someone gives you some good advice. That's a gift. Someone gives you some instruction. Someone assists you in your service. Someone says something which helps make your life easier as a devotee, or helps you become more focused in your service. Nonetheless, most people are bound by the knots of the marital relationship, and consequently they forget their relationship with Krishna. So in family life, the purpose of a devotee family life is to remind each other of Krishna. The material world is already geared for forgetting Krishna. So if one becomes a Grihamedi or simply a sense enjoyer, then we can easily forget Krishna. And we have sta. So sta means like stable. There's linking that word. It means fixed. And so many, that word sta comes in like, it's like a place which is fixed. So it means that one may have a griha, may have a house, but they're fixed in the Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada sometimes referred to his grihasta disciples as grihasta brahmacharis. And on occasion, When devotees are trying for children, then Prabhupada permitted it, 50 rounds once a month. They can try for children if they're trying for children, but one shouldn't become attached to the ritual, thinking 50 rounds once a month, every month. That's just like abusing principle. So otherwise, Prabhupada expected. So this is the standard for all devotees, whether you're brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas, is the 4 regs and the 16 rounds. Same standard for everyone. And therefore Prabhupada said that ISKCON is a movement of Paramahamsas. So Prabhupada he's pulling us up to a high level, which we ordinarily wouldn't be aiming for ourselves. If we follow our own conditioned nature, then we wouldn't be aiming for that. So we can see that Prabhupada didn't ask us to chant 128 rounds a day like Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Initially he said 64, then 32, then 16. And he's given us so much engagement that we can keep our mind and senses engaged. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service. So if we find our mind becoming disturbed with lust or material desire, then the cure for it is to do more service. The cure is to be more absorbed in Krishna consciousness, more reading, more chanting, more hearing, more service. So anything which is, if we feel like Maya is coming back into our life again, then we have to put in more Krishna. So just as on the banner of the Back to Godhead magazine, it says, Godhead is light and essence is darkness. Where there is Godhead, there is no darkness. So this is whereas we're chanting our japa, and at 5 to 7, someone switches the light on, and all of a sudden, we can wake up a little bit. So this is the light. When the light goes on, the darkness is dispelled. So if we feel we're getting once again attached to Krishna consciousness, that'd be a good thing, attached to Krishna consciousness. If we once again becoming attached to material sense gratification, then this material sense gratification, we can overcome that by engaging our mind and senses in hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, all these different 9 processes, worshipping, etc. I think Prabhupada mentions that in the purport also. So that even when, this, just going back to that Hridaya Granthi. So the word sadhu means to cut. Of course, sometimes that's been misinterpreted, and someone just uses that to become really thoughtless in their cutting, become harsh, and just think, well, I'm a sadhu, so I'll just blast you. So that's not what Krishna says. Words should be pleasing, it should be represented by Shastra, should be truthful, and what else was it? Beneficial. So we have to be considering these things: pleasing, beneficial, and truthful. So the sadhu actually, if you cut with a blunt knife, if you say you cut a tomato with a blunt knife, it's more dangerous than cutting it with a sharp knife, isn't it? It's liable to slip and cause an injury. So the sharp knife of the sadhu means that he's ekeha, he's single-pointed in his Krishna consciousness, he's already very pure, and he is well-meaning. And his weapon is already very sharp due to his good Krishna conscious practice, good sadhana. But in order to give instruction, then there must be some kind of relationship there, and there must be some desire. So, and it's not really, on both sides, it's not really enough just to say, well, the person needed to hear it, so I just gave it to them. And it's also not really from the point of the receiver, it's not really the point that we're unwilling to take any instruction. So no matter how nice they're trying to present it, how beneficial it may be for us, or how truthful it is, then it's not that we don't accept any instruction from anybody, because sometimes you just, it's hard to instruct certain people. at all, about anything. So we have to be willing to be instructed. When we're willing to be instructed, and even if it doesn't come as palatable as we'd like it, we're able to accept it. The biggest austerity about austerities is trying to avoid austerity. It's like, I don't want any austerities. And then, well, okay, and then something will become an austerity, even an austerity which wasn't an austerity before it becomes an austerity. But if we're willing, then we don't see it. Just like if you're running the race, 100 meters hurdles, and you're just focused on each hurdle, you probably knock each one over on the way there. For those who are running the hurdles, they're looking at the finish line. They're not looking at the hurdles at all. They're just jumping over them. If they knock one down, they just keep going. And then they get to the end of the race. If we're looking at the hurdles and we knock it over, and then we stand and look at it, and then we think, should I pick it up? Should I walk around it? Should I go underneath it? And meanwhile, the race is already, before we know it, the race is won or run, and we're still there at the first hurdle. So naturally in the material world, we're going to experience some austerities, we're going to experience some difficulties. We should stay and go through them in Krishna consciousness. And say that God loves a trier. So Krishna is looking for an endeavour. He mentions that in the Bhagavad Gita. In this endeavour, there's no loss or diminution. He doesn't say in this result. He's in this endeavour. So he wants to see us trying. And when Krishna sees us trying, he's so very happy. Just like the parent, when they see the child trying to walk, they're very excited, think, oh, this is great, soon they'll be able to walk. Or trying to talk. So similarly, we try to chant Sanskrit slokas, and the great sages are laughing at us attempting to chant them. We try to chant Hare Krishna, and we think, yeah, I'm chanting properly, but that devotee there, he hardly chants the full mantra. But have we ever listened to our own japa? And so we have plenty of our own faults to go on with. We've got plenty of work to do on ourselves. I think it's easier if we change everyone else, but really we need to change ourselves. Everyone's concerned with himself, everything will grow nicely. I came across a nice, someone devotee sent me a nice thing recently. It said, basically you have the choice of comfort or growth in spiritual life. If you want to be comfortable and try to make yourself comfortable all the time, then you're pretty much ignoring the opportunities for growth. If you want to grow in spiritual life, just like a child has growing pains, or there's a learning curve. If you ever have to learn something new, there's a bit of a learning curve. Your mind's saying, oh, I can't understand this, or I can't do that. But we just have to make our mind our best friend by saying, yeah, we can do this. If one person can do it, another person can do it. At least we can give it a try. And Krishna is pleased by that endeavour. So in this way, we can engage ourselves enthusiastically in devotional service and stay free from the attachment of Griha Medi, which is considered to be the deep, dark well of material existence. If somebody falls into a deep, dark well, then they can't get out unless someone lifts them. So the spiritual master and the Guru Sadhu and Shastra, then these instructions are meant to untie the knot or the many knots of material attachment. So if we keep subjecting our consciousness to Guru, Sadhu and Shastra and the devotional practices, then the knots become untied, and sometimes we don't even see it ourselves. It's like when there's many, many knots, you untie one or two and you think, oh, this is hopeless, we're not getting anywhere. But as someone else seeing that the string's getting longer and longer, we are getting somewhere. So we don't see that ourselves, but others see it in us. Because the changes are almost imperceptible, and because we're going through some difficulty during the change. So therefore we have to be patient with ourselves, and we have to be patient with others, knowing that they're in the process, they're going to improve. We're in the process, it's the process works. Nobody's so fallen that the process isn't going to work. Krishna is unconquerable, so don't think that your Maya is going to conquer over Krishna. Only if you remain attached to Maya, that's a choice. So Krishna is known as Hari. He can take everything away, but he won't take away our freedom of choice. So that has to be given up voluntarily. And which means we have to put Krishna back as the supreme cause of all causes, not us. We're not the center of attention. We'll just stop there. And if anyone's got any questions, I hope so.
Just one question, one comment was that to be ideal, we have this in the management system. Training, someone's been trained as brahmachari for 25 years, then they've got a good chance of being good. So sometimes the devotees they're in the brahmachari ashram for just a couple of years, and then they're thinking, okay, now it's time to settle down because I'm over 25. So it's maybe not such a good strategy to leave.
Yeah, well, Kelly, we're not being brought up in the Varnashram system so much. We weren't born so much in a favorable situation where we went to Gurukul, and then at 25 we became Grihastha after having been trained in Gurukul from day one. So most of us were living not such a devotional life, and joining. Some people aren't even joining till they're 50 or later. So the devotees who join the Krishna consciousness movement, they're depending more on the mercy of Guru Krishna. Yeah. I also was reading the book What is the Difficulty, which is written by, what's his name? Shrutakirti. And in that, Prabhupada was saying that the Varnashram, he says that's not so much for the devotees. He says ISKCON's for the devotees, and Varnashram is for them outside. And the idea is that gradually slow increments of development. And even Prabhupada says that if the population in general became vegetarian, even just that one thing, if they stopped animal slaughter, then even the weather would improve. And it's quite prophetic because decades later, then people are talking about how this slaughter industry is a big cause of global warming. And Prabhupada said that, back in the 60s, said if they stop this animal slaughter, even the weather will be better. So he doesn't say things whimsically. There's so much in a small sentence he could save the planet. People listen to him. So what's your original question again?
So that was just a comment, but then the question was about instructing people that we're not just going around cutting them, doing something around the side and just slashing everyone, chopping them to pieces. So because we are being careful about how we instruct a person has very low self-esteem, how would we go about giving them advice which would be constructive, we're not discouraging for them?
Sometimes you have to consider who is the best person to give it. You might see this instruction has to be given, but it might be better that someone else does it. So if you care about the person, you think, okay, maybe I'm not the best person, who would be a better person? Then you ask them if they can do it. Or another way you can do it as a general thing in class, bring it up as a general principle and hope the person picks it up. Otherwise, what can happen is you can actually just damage relationships, so you can put the person to further lack of confidence into feeling that they should just give up, stuff like that. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said he used to think long and hard before chastising. Yeah, so the Varnashram system, Prabhupada gave ISKCON to the devotees as a society of devotees. And sometimes devotees, it seems like they prefer to be part of the Varnashram system than be part of ISKCON, which is more of the movement of Paramahamsas. So, and as ISKCON gets bigger, then there'll be more opportunity for devotees to fit into these kind of things. But certainly in the mood of ISKCON, which is a pioneering preaching movement, then a devotee they won't limit themselves to one particular type of varna or ashram. This is following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya, Gopi Bhakti Padakamayo Dasa Dasa Dasa. So he says, Naham Vipro Nachana Avkirna Pivashana Subhanam. I can't remember the rest of it. It comes off the tongue usually when you're doing it with puja. Anyway, he says, I'm neither a brahmachari who has the vanaprastha sannyas, I'm not a Sudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya or Brahmin, but I'm a servant of the milk-agent virgin. So this is the mood that Prabhupada wanted the devotees to cultivate, that we're servant of the servant. And in this way, we don't have to concern ourselves too much with these things, because a Vaishnava is above all these things in the sense that he can do any service. He won't limit himself to just doing one service. Not like I'm a Brahmin, so I don't do this, I don't do that. He sees everything as Krishna's, so any service to Krishna is equal, and that's the higher platform that Prabhupada wanted to encourage the devotees to go for. But for those who are too attached, then just as in the 12th chapter, Krishna explains different levels of offering service to him. One can offer the results of their activities, but better than that is this. So, different levels. Anything else? Yes.
I think that Prabhupada was speaking about, we can have this conception of someone being in a particular relationship to me, and how that's an illusory type of mindset. What's the balance between being detached but at the same time being affectionate and kind?
So the affection can be based, it's all depend on the basis. If the basis is material attraction, then you're neither being kind to the person or yourself. If the basis is you see this person as a devotee, then showing a certain amount of affection. Prabhupada says, he instructed some of his male disciples, says that one shouldn't be too affectionate to the wife. He didn't say one should be unaffectionate. So whatever that too affectionate is, he didn't get any specifics. So if we feel ourselves becoming overly attached, then perhaps we're being too affectionate. But one can also, by reciprocal service and support, then one can show affection in that way as well. And to be attentive to the other person's needs. And that can cover many different things. Anything else? It's going to be the key. Prabhupada ki. Guru Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj ki. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Prana ki.